Even though Pokemon seems to be such a kid-friendly franchise, many of the Pokemon themselves are anything but. This dangerous tendency was taken to an all-new high in Pokemon Sun and Moon with the introduction of several new Alolan Pokemon. Despite their adorable appearances, you absolutely do not want to let your kids near them. These are 5 Alolan Pokemon you should keep away from your kids. You've just moved with your 10-year-old son to the Alola region. After uprooting your child from his home and friends, you're starting to feel a little bad about it. Thankfully, you've heard of a Pokemon called ORICORIO, whose dancing brings its trainer joy. You set out to find one, determined to make your child happy. When you find it, you're a little unsettled. It's purple, carries fans, and dances slowly and sultrily. The look in its eyes makes you think it's up to something. But as you can't always judge a Pokemon by its looks, you decide to bring it home with you. After all, the Pokédex couldn't have been wrong. You give it to your son and step back, excited for ORICORIO to work its magic. ORICORIO starts to slowly sway, turning its fans this way and that. You wait for your son to smile. However, as you watch, the opposite happens. The sparkle leaves your son's eyes, and he falls completely still. You rush to his side, snapping your fingers in front of his face, but he slips into a daze. You turn to ORICORIO, only to freeze, spirits rising from the floor, swirling in time to ORICORIO's dance. The room chills, and a great anger fills the air. ORICORIO meets your eyes, and you finally understand. This ORICORIO does not want to bring joy, it only wants revenge. ORICORIO is one of the most interesting of the new Alolan Pokemon. It has 4 different variants according to the flower nectar of the island it comes from. This has made it a confusing Pokemon for locals unfamiliar with its forms. While the Pom-Pom style of ORICORIO does try to cheer its trainer, the Sensu style does something different. According to the Pokédex, it summons the dead with its dreamy dancing. From their malice, it draws power with which to curse its enemies. Not only that, but the Pokédex entry for the Bale style ORICORIO states, it beats its wings together to create fire. As it moves in the steps of its beautiful dance, it bathes opponents in intense flames. So watching a Bale style ORICORIO dance might make you spontaneously combust. Just be careful which ORICORIO you let into your home. Maybe the ORICORIO didn't work out, but you still want your child to have a friend. One day, you and your son run into a MIMIKYU. Your skin crawls. You've heard the island legends. MIMIKYU are dangerous Pokemon that cast curses on people, but your son instantly bonds with it. Despite your warnings, he doesn't really care about MIMIKYU's terrible reputation. He tells you, everyone deserves to have a friend. Proud, you bring MIMIKYU home. After all, it's just a local superstition. Things go well for a while. MIMIKYU is ecstatic to have a real friend for the first time in its life. Then one night, as you pass your child's room, you hear him muttering, "Please MIMIKYU, I promise I won't get upset. I love you, so it's okay." At first you don't think much of it, but then something settles into the pit of your stomach. You turn on your heel and sprint to your son's room. You run in just as MIMIKYU's sheet falls back over its head. It sees you and starts to cry, then runs out of the room. Your child is dead on the floor, a look of terror on his face. All MIMIKYU ever wanted was to be loved. In fact, that's why it takes on the look of a Pikachu, as its Pokédex entry says. A lonely Pokemon, it conceals its terrifying appearance beneath an old rag so that it can get closer to people and other Pokemon. MIMIKYU hoped the cuteness of Pikachu would help it make friends. But Alolans avoid it, because they know terrible things will happen if you look beneath its covering. According to Pokemon Sun's Pokédex entry, there is a legend that a scholar who saw what was under its rag was overwhelmed by terror and died from the shock. Your child might sincerely want to befriend a Mimikyu, might love it enough to show it accepts Mimikyu's true self, only to die in return. Mimikyu can't show its true self to anyone it loves. Great lesson to teach a kid, isn't it? Now, your kid is sad, and you're too paranoid to let him play outside. You've heard what happens to other parents. However, you want him to have some kind of adventure. So you take him camping and promise he won't leave your sight for even a second. Off you go into the forest. You find a nice, open clearing and set up a tent. Everything goes well. You and your son bond, make s'mores, and settle in to look at the stars. Then something on the edge of the clearing starts glowing. Your son, eager for excitement, jumps up and chases it down, bringing back an adorable MORELULL. As he begs you to let him keep it, it sneezes and glowing blue spores fly from its head. You gaze at the spores, and your eyes grow heavy. You collapse on the forest floor, suddenly so sleepy. The last thing you see is your son's laughing face. You wake up. You're covered in a light spray of dew. You must have been asleep all night. Something nudges your arm, and you turn over to see what it is. A SHIINOTIC has grabbed hold of your arm, and is sucking a shimmering golden light from your body, your life energy. You scream and push it away, get to your feet and look for your son. His greying body lies next to your tent, eyes open and glassy. The MORELULL he held evolved into SHIINOTIC and killed him. You turn on SHIINOTIC, ready to slaughter, but SHIINOTIC begins to glow. Your vision blurs, your mind goes hazy. What were you even going to do here in the first place? You sit down, hugging your knees to your chest. SHIINOTIC takes hold of your arm. Absently, you pet it across the head. It's nice to have company when you're getting so tired. Initially, MORELULL are more adorable looking nocturnal mushroom Pokemon. According to the Pokédex entry, it scatters spores that flicker and glow. Anyone seeing these lights falls into a deep slumber. That's inconvenient, but it's not until MORELULL evolves into SHIINOTIC that things get scary. The Pokédex says, forests where SHIINOTIC live are treacherous to enter at night. People confused by its strange lights can never find their way home again. And, like its younger self, it emits flickering spores that cause drowsiness. When its prey succumb to sleep, this Pokemon feeds on them by sucking their energy. The worst thing is, by the time you see those flickering blue lights and realize SHIINOTIC or MORELULL is somewhere nearby, it's already too late. It's been a while since your daughter's friends have set out on their Pokemon journeys and she's getting lonely. You feel like a terrible parent. Maybe it would have been better to let her risk her life in the wild. To make it up to her, you decide to get her a pet. So one day, you bring home the cutest, most cuddly Pokemon imaginable, a STUFFUL. STUFFUL's arms pack an intense punch, but after a couple days, your daughter teaches it to control itself. At first, you're a little wary STUFFUL might accidentally hurt her, but STUFFUL doesn't like it when people touch it. And besides, she and STUFFUL adore each other. They're inseparable. There's no problem here, right? One day, you're out on the porch watching your daughter play. Suddenly, Eradicate leaps out and attacks her. Your daughter screams. You rush to your feet to help her, but before you can, STUFFUL has knocked the Eradicate out. Relief floods you, but then something else happens. STUFFUL starts to glow and change. As you watch, your daughter STUFFUL transforms into a BEWEAR. Tears in your eyes, you rush to thank the Pokemon that saved your daughter's life. But before you get close, your daughter turns to BEWEAR and gives it a big bear hug. BEWEAR wraps its arms around your daughter and squeezes her tight. She gasps and starts clawing at BEWEAR's arms, but BEWEAR is too happy to notice, and your daughter's spine snaps with a harsh crack. STUFFUL's looks are incredibly deceiving. According to the Pokédex entry, despite its adorable appearance, when it gets angry and flails about, its arms and legs could knock a pro wrestler sprawling. In addition, a touch from anyone except a known friend sends it into a surging frenzy. It's an incredibly dangerous Pokemon. But STUFFUL is nothing compared to BEWEAR. With a STUFFUL, your child might get a bit banged up, but according to BEWEAR's Pokédex entry, this Pokemon has the habit of hugging its companions. Many trainers have left this world after their spines were squashed by its hug. How adorable? A Pokemon's life is fading away. With its last breath, it vows revenge on the one who destroyed it. Months later, you take your son to the beach. All you want is a little break, some time to relax after spending all your energy keeping your child safe. You close your eyes and start to doze. As you nap, your son builds a sandcastle on the beach. Suddenly, the sandcastle starts moving, playing with your son. He's delighted. He adds new turrets and pets what now seems to be a living creature. Slowly, the castle forms eyes, a mouth, a head. It leans its head forward for your son to pat. Your son reaches out his hand, and SANDYGAST bites into it. Your son's body goes rigid. His eyes search frantically for help. He wants to call out, to cry for you to wake up and come save him. You're only a few feet away, but he can't move. He's been possessed. SANDYGAST pulls your son into its body. Hand first, then arm, chest, skull. He disappears into SANDYGAST, who sucks the life right out of him. And so, SANDYGAST adds to its body. Beneath SANDYGAST's almost cute face lies a grudge strong enough to be given life. According to its Sun Pokédex entry, born from a sand mound playfully built by a child, this Pokemon embodies the grudge of the departed. And in Moon, we're told, it takes control of anyone who puts its hand in its mouth. Thought that was bad enough? Not quite. When SANDYGAST accumulates enough life energy, it evolves into PALOSSAND, a creature capable of possessing adults and replenishing its own sand at will. That's right, it basically becomes immortal. It devours the bodies of those it possesses, and according to the Pokédex entries, buried beneath the castle are masses of dried up bones from those whose vitality it has drained. But that's not all. According to the Pokemon Sun and Moon website, as PALOSSAND swallows Pokemon, those it defeats are filled with hatred and ill will, and their grudges sink deep into the sand, sowing the seeds for more SANDYGASTs and continuing the cycle. So maybe don't take your kid to the beach. I hope you enjoyed this week's list, and if you did, leave a like. And if you want to see more Pokemon lists, click here for my top 10 Pokemon made creepier in the Alolan region, which is about older generation Pokemon with updated Pokédex entries, or here for my top 10 rarest Pokemon cards.